Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Live Free Now show, bringing you the news, views, tips, and tools you can use to live a free, prosperous, and healthy life. I'm your host, John Bush, and we're live here Wednesday, September 10th, 11 a.m. Shout out to the folks tuning in live. Shout out to the folks listening in the podcast, on the podcast later. Today, we're going to be doing an interview for the entirety of the show with the one, the only Kelly Brogan. We're going to get deep on all sorts of stuff from masculine, feminine polarity to what it means to be embodied. We'll talk about health, maybe get into entrepreneurship a little bit, because I'm always in awe of Kelly's, what she's built and how it's evolved over time, taking notes. But yeah, we are really excited to have her joining us today. Let's go ahead and get right down to it so we can make the most out of our time together. How are you, Kelly?
Oh, it's so amazing to watch you in your element, because you were so born to do this. What else could you possibly be doing with your life? Like, this is exactly what you should be doing. It's great to
to be here. Well, I'm trying to be a farmer and rancher too, but I definitely enjoy this.
You need a microphone. You need a microphone.
I guess you could bring the phone along with you. But why don't you start by just introducing yourself to the audience? I understand that you were more in the mainstream system, as we all are, to begin with. And what was it that was a catalyst for you to be like, wait a second, this isn't right? And yeah, just let us know what you're all about.
Sure. So I guess this is true of a lot of turncoat MDs, that we brush up against the glass ceiling of our own training, right? So normally we have to draw from the system some sort of resources that we recognize it's unable to give, right? So we get sick, quote unquote, and we don't want what's offered, right? So that's exactly what happened to me. I'm a totally conventionally trained psychiatrist. I actually specialized in prescribing to pregnant and breastfeeding women. That's how into pharma I was at the time. Very materialistic, like total scientism, cult carrying card member. And I was diagnosed on a routine physical postpartum with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which I'm sure many of the women listening have heard of. And the voice that rose up was basically like, I don't want to take a prescription, even though, that's all I did all day long was write these prescriptions to everyone I encountered. And because of that, I went off into the wild unknown. And here I am, like this very, matter of fact, like intellectual. And I found myself in a naturopath's office because I knew what the system had to offer. I knew they had no escape hatch. And I ended up at this point, it was through dietary change primarily. And I'm Italian American, so I was raised on like bread and cheese of all varieties. And so changing my diet I also was like a huge junk food consumer, 80s kid. And it was totally anathema to my consciousness to consider changing my diet. This was back in 2010. And I did it because my naturopath was very academic, right? So she wasn't like burning sage with like mala beads. It wasn't like that at all. She was very academic, and I vibed her at the time. She was a perfect fit. So anyway, I did it. I watched in black and white. My numbers on my labs correct. And instead of feeling inspired and excited that I'd like dodged a bullet, I was righteously angry.
Mm.
And all of these waves of what I now understand were this almost like adolescent rupture with the parentified entities, that were held in the medical system. I felt this in psychology, they call it a rupture of empathy. So I felt like this system doesn't give a shit about me and it couldn't help me when I really needed help. Right. So that's kind of, if you think about like a child's wounding, I mean, it's pretty familiar pain, right? So anyway, I was angry. I vowed to take the system down. I took out a huge life insurance policy and I wrote what ended up being like a grassroots New York Times bestseller with an exploding pharmaceutical pill on the cover. So I was like a very angry, righteous activist for like 10 years. Landed me on the disinformation dozen list. And that's probably around the time that we started finding each other in the world. And since that time, I have been on what I would say is the next phase of my maturation beyond the finger pointing and blaming and honestly superiority that comes with a
Mm.
lot of activism and this sense that I know better, how things should be. And it's very, very tempting bait to take, that I know better how other people should live their lives. I know better how reality should be. And I've been really humbling myself, I suppose, over the past couple of years. And it's taken me to some surprising places, questioning a lot of my values, right? And specifically my attachment to status and the security of my career and success and all of these, what I would now refer to as masculine values that I have put ahead of a lot of my relational dynamics in my life, including my role as mother. And so that's really brought me to begin to expose the psyop of feminism. I never really saw that coming. And really to look at things like the deconstruction of the American family and the assault on marriage and, gender roles and all this kind of stuff. So it's been quite a journey, but I definitely started deep, deep in the matrix.
Wow. I love that. And it's quite the contrast as well, to be so deep in the matrix. And maybe sometimes the deeper you are in the matrix, the more rapid the transformation when you wake up, because there was that sense of injustice. And I had a similar kind of arc. I wasn't a doctor. I was a kid, 18, 19, and woke up because of 9/11. And it started with the phase of anger and outrage and finger pointing. And then it transformed into more solutions, but there was a sense of superiority. Like, I got it all figured out. Even I'm an anarchist and we're doing alternative solutions and you're still into politics. I'm so much better than you.
Right.
And then more recently, especially this past year, the humbling piece. If anything, it's kind of a paradox, because you would think that the power comes in being so confident and certain of yourself. But there's this radical freedom that comes from being like, holy shit, I don't know anything. I thought I did. I thought I had it all together. I've been advising people about this and that, but I myself still have a lot of growing up to do. So let me ask you this. And maybe we could take it like as an analogy to soil. When you're growing food, I just heard somebody say this the other day. It was Adrian Grenier. He's here in Central Texas. You're not actually growing food. You're actually cultivating the soil, and the food comes from the soil. So what would you say is necessary to go into someone's being in order to cultivate fertile grounds for self-reflection and somebody being capable of humbling themselves so that they can see the world in a different way, or finally open up to the possibility that maybe they haven't been right about everything, or they've actually been harming other people? What would you say are some of those factors that help contribute to that? Or because a lot of people aren't going to go there, their ego won't allow them to. So what helped you to go there?
Yeah, so I can only speak as a woman, and I have been studying patterns in women. My clinical practice was a women's health practice up in New York when I was deprescribing for these gals. And I imagine that it's nuanced enough to be similar, but notably different for men. You tell me. So my sense is that the poor bargain that we've taken as women certainly thanks to feminism and the sexual liberation movement and even the New Age movement and other accompanying agendas, is that we want freedom, security, and power, right? And that once we have those things, just like men have them, right, then we will feel finally okay, right? So the bar is kind of low. And so we make this poor bargain, right? We say we'll trade all sorts of things, right? We'll trade our relationship to our emotions and take antidepressants. We'll trade our relationship to our wombs and take birth control pills and medicalize our birth and forego breastfeeding. We will put our babies into the hands of strangers because we have to maintain that status. We trade so many essential aspects of our fulfillment as feminine essence beings, as David Data would refer to it. And when we get the thing that we thought we wanted, it doesn't feel the way we imagined that it would. So in many ways, I kind of ascended to one of the many summits that are promised through the feminist rhetoric, right? So I'm now a totally, and for years have been totally independent, right? Financially secure, successful, credentialed doctor, whatever, and single mother. Like, who needs a man, right? I have lived that life officially. I've gotten all the things that I was offered. A bank account, I get to pay taxes, right? Like all these things that people say women should be entitled to do, which of course to us are funny entitlements, right? And once I sort of got there, I looked around and I was like, ladies, turn around. Like it's not up here. And then I started to explore, okay, so what is it actually that I've always wanted? And that's where I came into contact with the value of safety, right? That I actually value safety, a feeling of safety in my body. I call it like an exhale, right? A feeling of safety in my body, safety in my relationships, and safety in the world as a woman is far more valuable to me, actually, than freedom, power, status, security. And that when I am in vigilance, when I am in overachieving, when I am externally focused, right, which is the typical pattern of conditioning for women, is that we are very externally focused. We're constantly assessing, studying, clocking our environment. I am not home in here, and I cannot access my birthright, which is my energy, right? It's the capacity to move this feminine energy through my vessel and to offer whatever that creates and reflects and gives birth to the world, right? I'm not available to literally fulfill my birthright, and it feels wrong, right? It feels wrong, and it should, right? And we call it depression, and we call it anxiety and burnout, and sometimes it's just an experience of chronic bitterness and resentment and overwhelm, and we kind of tighten up and get more rigid in our bodies over time, and we gaslight ourselves and we say, why is it that I don't feel happy? Look what I have. Look how free I am to do whatever the hell I want. But just ask any single mom who's managing an entire household, then also CEOing a business and navigating the world on her own, if she would like some help, right? If she'd like some support, and if she would prefer to have a trustworthy companion at her side, right? So most of us have come to the conclusion that the poor bargain has not yielded what we thought it would, even if we've gotten the things that were promised. So then I asked the question, okay, well, how does safety arise? Am I supposed to make the world safe? Okay, you and I know that's unlikely to be forthcoming anytime soon. Am I supposed to demand, right, that nobody microaggress me? And I'm supposed to demand that everybody is nice to me and respects my boundaries and my feelings? We're not here to control other people. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. And then what about my body? What if my body does things that I don't want it to do? Then what? Right? Like, what if I have symptoms that scare me? Where's the safety supposed to come from? Am I supposed to pray that somebody comes into my life and just makes it all nicey? That's princess psychology, right? So that's when I started to sort of weave in my many years of neuroscience training and learn a lot of somatics, right? And learn about how to interpret the body's language, right? How it perceives both internally, right? So when you feel sensations internally, and also externally, how you assess the environment. It's called neuroception, right? Uh, and how you can begin to change your perception so that you can experience more safety in your body. You create the conditions for safety, right, through lifestyle medicine. And then you create the conditions for safety relationally, and you begin to live in a safer world. And the yield of this is that you see more clearly. I call it with sober eyes. You begin to see what's actually there. And situations are not as scary. People are not as threatening. And all of these like fierce, crazy rules you once thought you needed to live by, they sort of soften. And you begin to live in a different life. Right. And as again, I mentioned, as an activist who perceived like the sky to be falling at all times. I mean, there were years that I cried myself to sleep that I brought children into this world. I just could not see how it would ever get unfucked. Okay. And I also, during the pandemic, lived in this very contentious, very conflict oriented place. And over time, as I did this work and brought my focus inside of myself, began to practice in my real life, in my real relationships, to develop the soft skills of being both autonomous and connected, I began to live in a totally different world where now I don't really concern myself with what's going on out there. I really don't, because it's not going on here. And so it necessarily involves, at least for me, a projection of my inner characters, my inner conflicts, and my mommy daddy issues, right? For me, that's what I discovered when I reeled it in, and when I stopped focusing on the anonymous victim out there, and when I stopped imagining that it's my role to save anybody's life, let alone the world. I resolved both, the rescuer and in many ways the villain, right? Because at least I'll speak for myself as an activist, like I was out for blood. Okay. I was not satisfied until, you name it. But let's say the pharmaceutical industry was like crumbled, to rubble. And that's a villainous energy, right? It truly is. And you become, I think Nietzsche supposedly said this, like the monster that you're fighting. And that's why so many activists that I know and knew in the anti-pharma space had like dumpster fires of personal lives, right? Like their marriages, their parenting, their friendships, their dynamics with their family of origin, like just total mess because they're so externally focused on fixing what was wrong out there. And it's not to say it's certainly not a judgment. And that's the whole point. It's like, I don't feel like, oh, I'm a better person now. I was like a shitbag then. It's not like that at all. It's just that for me to feel safer in my body, to develop more intimacy in my life, and to actually feel fulfilled as a woman, I had to get very real about my priorities and my values and recognize that my priorities have always been my relationships. Okay. Uh, and I wasn't acting like that. So when you behave out of sync, with your values and your priorities, you'll feel it eventually. Like eventually that hollow, like, is this it? Right? This is life. That hollow feeling, it's like a nihilistic feeling that creeps up where you begin to feel like, I don't know. I don't know if this is worth it. And it's pretty harrowing, right? So I think that creating the conditions for safety is something I have spent 15 years decoding for women. I think I have a pretty good sense of what that path and journey looks like. But what it can look like to invite somebody to do that work and to explore that, I'm not interested anymore, because I don't consider it to be my business to inspire or let alone coerce anybody else to see what I see. And that for me was the biggest resolution of my shadow material, because my shadow always lived under, I'll get you to see.
Hmm.
And, as you can see, I have gift of gab. So I would I'll just talk my way into getting you to see my perspective, whether that was my partner, my kids, the public at large. And always there was a manipulative hook in there. And when I began to let go of trying to get anyone to see my perspective, I got so much energy back,
Huh.
and I began to respect other people in a way that did resolve this superiority. I began to see look at all of us who are doing all this inner work and so sovereign and whatever. And then look at somebody in my extended family who hasn't thought about any of this once, but meanwhile they have a beautiful family life, they're enjoying each other. And I would compare and I would be humbled, right? And say, well, I'm not actually sure it's better over here. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe it's fine it's like you have your own reality tube. Maybe it's fine for wherever you are, for you. And it's not my business to impose my reality on you. And the last thing I'll say is the real arena within which transformation arose from this shift is my mothering, because there were very nefarious and subtle ways that I was imposing my reality on my daughters. And it's like I began this layer of work just in time for their sort of tween teen years. And I'm grateful. I could cry talking about it every single day that I just happened to mature in this way in time, because I still have time with them. And now they are the center of my life. My role as mother is the center of my life, and everything else is an accessory. And that was 1000%. I mean, I put my career first. I put, my second husband first. I put even my friends first before my role as mother. And I could do that all day long, except I was the one feeling bereft, because of that. So I was the one who was suffering the consequences in the end.
Wow. That's awesome and very beautiful. And there's so much that came up for me while receiving that message. I do want to shout out my good friend and my curandera, Vanessa. She says we externalize safety when the work starts within. Vanessa and Danny. Vanessa was actually my best man at our wedding, and Vanessa did the little, what do you call it? I don't even remember the name. She married us, so to speak.
Officiant.
The officiant. That's right. The spiritual officiant. And, I always used to be triggered by Danny and Vanessa because they weren't always this way. They used to be hyper combative and toxic. And then they went on the spiritual journey.
Wow.
And then I was like, but that's all y'all are doing. And it's just never ending spiritual work and growth and all these revelations. And then you got to sit down and let's talk about what we just went through. And it brought up this shadow childhood thing. And let's comfort our inner child. And I was like, I don't have time for that shit. I'm trying to
grow some shit in the backyard.
Yeah. And so now I honor them. And I'm very what you were sharing is very parallel with what I'm going through. And I'm having those same realizations because unfortunately my desire to control and my constant overworking put me in a place where I was not present with the needs of the most important people in my life. And that has since came crashing down in pretty major ways. And so I'm here whoa, what is going on? And a huge piece of it was that selling, and that I got the gift of gab too. And I thought I had it all together and it's my way. This is the best way because I'm older and I got it all. And I've been an entrepreneur since 2009. And I'm so proud of myself. We started this big company, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, like the relationship's totally suffering. And so I'd try to be like, this is the way to do it. And then when they would resist, I would either belittle or let me talk you into it and let me go ahead and put some of my sales training into use. And so I came to realize after we started an intentional community and it completely fell apart. That was extremely humbling. And we're like the intentional community. I'm the intentional community guy. Action and Build Land Summit. Come to the event. We'll teach you how to start an intentional community. Look at ours. It's so beautiful. Everything's going perfect. Now, we are very vulnerable when we share stuff, which the audience loves, right? I'm sure your audience totally resonates with how vulnerable you are because we're trying to figure it out too. Totally. But yeah, I've since stopped doing that. I'm just now in that phase. And parenting has been a huge part of it too. We signed my son up for cotillion, which they learn etiquette and manners and ballroom dancing and 4-course meals and which forks to use. We don't have multiple forks at our dinner table. Well, we like to use paper plates more often than not. But he was so resistant and was like, threw a big fit in the morning and he's like, you don't care about me, Dad. And I'm like, of course I care about you. And I started to do the selling. Let me talk him into it. I did point out this shows that I do care about you because as you grow older, I'm trying to set you up for success. He kept going on. And that old John within me was like triggered. Let me talk him into why this is right for him and why he should respect his father, blah, blah, blah. Then I was like, oh no, I got a new way of doing things. So I just held space and totally validate. I completely understand why you're feeling frustrated. I know that you're feeling overwhelming. I feel overwhelmed sometimes too when I'm in situations like that. I totally get it. And then he cooled down, and in real time I'm like, yes, it's working. I'm validating his feelings. It's here. He feels better. And then he completely let go of it, and we showed up. He actually had a great time.
Oh my gosh. Tell him the ladies are gonna love this when he grows up.
Oh yeah. Well, the first thing he said when he got out was I was like, how was it? He was like, it was traumatizing. I had to dance with 10 different girls. But he was smiley and kind of and he got dressed up. He doesn't normally dress up. But, I came to realize that, like you were saying, from the female perspective, it was a desire to embody those masculine things, whatever we all think is working and financial security and go. And I'm an entrepreneur. Mine was all of my issues were coming from the same place, but it was like a toxic masculine desire to control and a detachment from my emotions. And I've come to realize, and there's still a lot to unpack, that maybe my workaholic nature was precisely because I was avoiding some kind of pain, some kind of trauma, inner child work that needs to be done, my shadow. And so I stayed busy for a decade, my entire adult life, whether it was activism or entrepreneurship. And it wasn't until things fell apart. And then I did this 75 hard and holy challenge through our 508 church. So you got 75 hard, 2 45-minute workouts, no booze, no drugs, no, you stick to a same diet. But I was like, I don't know if I could commit to the 2 45-minute workouts. And if I'm going to do it, I don't want to have to start starting over or quit. So I was like, what if it's 1 45-minute workout of the body, 1 45-minute workout of the spirit? Meditation, prayer, reading the Bible, going to church, watching YouTube videos that are transformational or whatever. So I did that for 75 days, actually 82 days. I had to start over after day 7 because I ate rice. I did paleo, but I'm still doing the paleo diet. Yeah, I blew it. But for the first time in a long, long time, I went without any substances whatsoever because I wasn't a heavy drinker, but I would drink. And during the stress period when our community was falling apart, relationships were falling apart, I was drinking more often. Yeah. But I always had gummies. One of my companies, we sell these Delta 9 gummies. And I wouldn't take a lot of them, get all stoned out. I would have little nibbles throughout the afternoon, usually starting noon to 3. And when I quit that too, I was like, oh shit, I was really hooked on those. And so for the first time in my adult life, coinciding with some pretty major disruptions in my life and relationships, I was feeling fully. And I tell you what, it was really hard, still is, but it's been absolutely transformational. So maybe we can shift into talk. It's not even a shift. It's the same thing. What is it about emotions that like we run from them, or we numb
Yeah.
them, or we busy ourselves? Why is it so hard just to live as a human being on this planet?
Yeah. God, I mean, this is the $1,000,000 question. And in my exploration of this topic, because again, I'm looking through a woman's eyes, and I am primarily, in service to women. But when I hear you describe your struggles, not only are they relatable because of how masculinized I have been, uh, but it also comes down to the same mm, aspirational goal, which
Mm,
is emotional self mastery, right? Emotional regulation, right? I sometimes think if the men of the world could emotionally regulate themselves, which does not mean suppress, it does not mean deny, ignore, doesn't mean any of those things, because we know it just comes out like a weird whack-a-mole when you do that, right? So that's not the solution. But emotional regulation involves bearing witness and expanding the capacity to allow for feelings to run their course, because every feeling has a trajectory. We just don't know that, because as kids we're told, stop crying, calm down, or I'll give you
yeah.
something to cry about, or go to your room or whatever. So we don't understand that you'll cry. You might even ugly cry. You might even sob with snot coming down your face. And then 10 minutes later you could be laughing, right? So the alchemical nature of emotional energy is not something we have any familiarity, let alone mastery over. So when you are emotionally regulated as a man, unlike women, you can shift your focus from the inside to the outside, right? We are looking to shift our focus from the outside to the inside, it seems to me. So when you shift your focus to the outside, you can attune better, you can serve, which is in so many ways what you're wired for, right? You can serve your woman, your children, your community, and you can attune to their biological expression and their needs in a way that you can't when you're all up in here trying to solve problems, that you're not even looking at from a bird's eye view. So when I've explored, like how do we get into this mess where we're basically like adolescents running around in adult suits, it actually took me back to the way that we birth, okay, and the way that we mothers specifically relate to the postpartum window and the first 3 years of life. So of our babies' lives. So I interviewed this woman for my podcast. Her name is Erica Commissar, and she wrote a book. I believe it's called Being There. And I mean, it was one of the hardest things I've read, because it's like it hurts, right? To encounter the like I wish I'd known kind of stuff. But anyway, she talks about the secure emotional attachment that a child has the capacity and potential to develop requires that the mom's body, okay, not the dad's, not the grandma's, certainly not the daycare owner, okay, the mom's body be biologically available for co-regulation pretty much at all times for 3 years.
Hmm.
Okay. So my parents are very involved in my daughter's lives. So I got like carte blanche to head back to work. When, you might ask? 3 weeks postpartum. Okay. 3 weeks, my second home birth, I went back to work in the office, because I was one of those women who enjoyed adult conversation and stimulation, and honestly found like babyhood boring. Okay. That's a trauma. That's a trauma. And that actually is more of an expression of my own trauma from my own birth. Okay. Than it is a reality that I should embrace and accept and even celebrate, right? Like it's like fetishized now that women are like, oh, can't wait to be around adults, right? Like I don't want to play games with my toddler or whatever. Of course, as my system has regulated, I now, like my baby daddy is remarried with a little 2-year-old. I could spend like all day long with this kid just playing. It's such a different experience of being present that wasn't available to me when I was less emotionally regulated, more avoidant, as you're describing. And what is the cause of that? Well, I don't know. It might have been from early in my life, right? So then you can get sort of like feel hopeless about it because you're like, oh, well, if I was fucked, from what happened back when, let alone what might have happened in my childhood or whatever, what the hell do I do about it? And I do think we're sort of wired, right? Like my defenses, I don't know. I've evolved and changed a lot, and my defenses, my first dominant response is still the same, right? So I'm more anxiously attached, right? So I want to seek connection more than I want to find myself by avoiding it, right? And that hasn't changed. What has changed is that there's a moment or two. There is a sense of self-observation that has inserted itself before I do the reflexive thing. And that gives me a feeling of actual presence and control, right? So I actually feel like I have choices here. And if I'm relationally triggered or whatever, instead of defaulting to my usual defenses, which as I've described would be to try to get the person to see, whether that's by an email or text or start running my mouth, instead of jumping immediately into that, which helps me to not feel the thing, now I have a commitment to myself as a woman, which is I will take 60 to 90 seconds to literally just sit with myself. I actually call this practice self-husbanding. Why do I call it that? Because I invoke the energy of a devoted masculine presence. This is all imaginary, right? Like this is just for fun. And as I do that, I can feel my spine get strong. My gaze is more almost like cast down onto my system, right? And then I just observe what the hell's going on. I don't label it. I don't say, oh, you're feeling this here and that must be grief. No, none of that. No interpretation, no story. And just prioritizing that, I think, sends a signal of safety to my system that says, oh, she's home. She's here, right? Like somebody's actually at the wheel. And then I have more choices than I had before. Like, for example, I don't know, maybe it's like a year ago or something. When did I publish my last book? I think it was like a year ago. I got this like super triggering email related to my book publication. And I am really skilled at writing scathing emails. And it's pretty much like the first book I wrote was pretty much like a scathing email. Okay. So I'm really skilled at it and it doesn't take me any time or effort. It's that well honed, right? So I get this thing and it's like this Rolodex unfurls of all the reasons why this person is wrong, all the evidence. I build my case. Like I would have been an extraordinary like attorney. Okay. And I deliver it. And the whole thing takes me like 90 seconds. Okay. And it's not like I'm like, fuck you. It's like very highbrow. Okay. So I would normally have done that. And in this case, I did do it. But I put it in a note, right? Like I put it in a little note for myself. And then I sat with the choice that I had to fix this issue and this problem. And I call it trying to buy eggs from the hardware store because I know the sender of this email, like I know how they operate. Okay. And I know is 1000% futile to send this email. But I could forward the email to my friends and be like, can you believe this? Like, look what I said. Oh, and I have many years of experience of doing that. Okay. So I could try to fix that, or I could use my energy in a more playful way, in a more interesting way, in a more creative way. And it's really a fork in the road. You're either fixing or you're creating. And so when I sat with that choice, I felt almost this kind of like mischievous energy come over me. And I was like, I'm not even going to bother. Like, I'm busy. I'm going to do something else, right? Like, I'm going to go to a dance class. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to like sew a bag or whatever. And I did that. And then I could feel, even in the coming days, all of the energy that would have been wound up in this totally pointless exchange, right? That now is mine. And to the extent that I now call that the erotic caress of the enemy. And this is what activists also do with, whomever they are focused on as being the perpetrator. we become obsessed. We follow their and track their every move, every tweet, like every whatever that they're up to. And it's an erotic entanglement. Your life force is literally wound up in a very intimate way. The problem is it's like totally one-sided, right? So like in this case, since it was personal, maybe we both would have gotten into the tango, but like, is that really what I want to be prioritizing energetically in my life? That just doesn't feel fun to me. It just doesn't feel compelling in the same way that it used to feel satisfying, right? Which is the same, it's the addict track, right? It's like you get to a point where you're like the returns, on the booze, the returns on the, whatever, opiates, the returns are now diminished, and I can see the cost. And there's like a yes that's calling me somewhere else. There's something even more compelling that I want just a little bit more. And then that becomes positively reinforcing, I think, over time.
Right on. That must have been empowering too, to not send it. You type it up and you're probably like, this is good stuff. This will really get them. And then to not send it, I guess you're holding that power instead of giving it away, because that would be giving away your power and your attention.
Taking the bait. Yeah, you take the bait.
What role do you think self-respect has what plays in all of this? Because I think a lot of people, when you cultivate that self-respect, you don't have the energy. There's better things to do. I'm not going to stoop to that level. I'm not going to engage. And I get the feeling that you have a whole lot of self-respect, and you're leveraging that to help, accelerate this transformation that you're constantly going through.
That's the thing, though. We can bullshit ourselves. I'll speak for myself. I can bullshit myself really well, right? Like really effectively, right? And I could tell myself, I could tell myself that sending the email is respecting myself, right? Like asserting this boundary is self-respect. But what I have found is that so self-respect is a slippery thing, just like self-love. Like I'm not really totally sure we have a shared understanding collectively of what the hell that even means. So that's why I've sort of come to this conclusion that if I want to be this, what I would call like a reclaimed woman, right? Like if I want to be this mature woman, then I have the opportunity to value my energy over everything else. So my energy becomes the most important thing to assess. And I am charged with protecting that energy. Now, what that translates to is that I no longer am the woman who wastes her energy on blaming, complaining, finger pointing, convincing, or proving. Now, do I still do those things? 100%. But now I have this awareness that I am acting at odds with my highest value, which my greatest asset, which is my energy. And if I am the guardian, of that energy, then doing those things, it's just not the vibe. It's not the woman that I want to be, right? Like sometimes when we make these identity shifts, you've got to fake it till you make it, right? Like you've got to act the part of the avatar you are growing into before it feels authentic. That's what growth is. It's the imposter syndrome is always the first stage of growth into a new identity. And so if I want to cut sugar out of my diet or booze, like I stopped drinking alcohol a couple of years ago as well. And now it's not like I'm like better than the version of me that loved to have a mezcal out with my girlfriends. Also, because I didn't really like suffer identifiable consequences, right? So in my case, it's an even better example. So it's not like I'm like better. I'm just not that woman. I'm this woman who doesn't mess with that. That's all, right? There's no reasons necessary, and there's no value judgment. There's no like proving that I need to be this woman. No, it's just like I am this woman now, and I might be another woman in a year, but right now this is the identity. So weaving these things into your identity, I think, helps to minimize the taboo, right? Because if I say I want to love myself and I want to respect myself, well, what happens when I don't? then I'm not being a good version of myself. And then I start to hide and I start to feel shame and I start to waste a shit ton of energy on that whole cycle. So instead, if I'm just like, my energy is precious and I'm going to guard it, and I am going to be very aware when I'm complaining, when I'm blaming, when I'm shit talking, when I'm finger pointing, when I'm trying to prove my point. I'm just going to be super aware of that to the extent that maybe I'm going to be quiet instead in that moment. And it's again, this is it's a nervous system level skill, because I couldn't just wake up one day and be like, I'm going to be silent instead of yapping in the moments where I go into that autopilot. I had to cultivate the capacity to watch the moment and then choose differently in the moment to shut it, slow down.
Slow down. Hold on. Slow down. Reverse, so I see it in the mirror.
I know.
I'm actually reading this awesome book called Slow Productivity that's been
Oh, cool.
radically, like, just a different perspective for work. Are you familiar with it? This guy,
No, I bet I would love it.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. I learned about it from a Mel Robbins interview. She's a total badass. I really like how she does podcasting. In fact, I've been wanting to do. I want to move away from this whole thing that I do on my show, and I just let the other person talk and stay. So it's more conversational. It's easier when two people are in person. But her podcasts are like, they're bouncing back and there's little fun interruptions. And it's like more of a tennis game instead of just like, let me ask a question. Anyway.
It is an artifact, I think, of the digital dynamic, right? Because like, yeah, we're not feeling each other's, presence and energy in the moment.
Yeah, it's different. But this book, super transformational, and it's given me a different perspective. I programmed myself on Grant Cardone's 10X, 10X your goals, massive action. And I wanted to like grow a giant company with the sales room. That's like Jason Belfort and Wolf of Wall Street. That's what I wanted. Yeah, woo, let's go. Yeah. And now I do not want that at all. It sounds nauseating unless it's like some division somebody else runs and I'm just the founder and like every once in a while I'll come in to do a webinar or something. But it's the idea of being slow has been so powerful for me. And I find myself having to fake it. But because I've slowed down and because I've been feeling into myself more and focusing within, I had this giant eureka the other day for the first time, a feeling of anxiety, the feeling of anxiety that I normally get. It was a normal thing whenever I'm rushed out the door or I'm in a meeting, but the meeting's going to end. That's what happened. I had a meeting. It was supposed to be an hour. It ended up, we let it go over an hour and 20 minutes. And I was watching the clock and I had to get out the door, get my son packed up and then get somewhere, had a place to be. So I switched from their meeting software to my phone. I put the headphones in, I'm wrangling up my kid, and I have that feeling of anxiety just from that rush. And then I got off the call and I was just sitting there. Now that I'm like way more in tune with my emotions, I was like, I feel terrible right now.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt. I got a feeling like all the time, multiple times a day, but I like had pride in it. Like, yeah, let's go. And I don't care about the feeling. Like, I'm not even conscious of it. This is just my life. But since I've slowed down, since I've gotten more in tune with my emotions, it really has been a big game changer. It's happened once since then. And I was like, no, I don't want to live like this. I'm cutting the meeting. I'm not going to have meetings. I'm going to put gaps whenever I'm doing this or that. And it's just like radically transformative, big shift. And it's great to be like more mindful and like an architect. I always had ambitions to be an architect of my own destiny and really accomplished a lot and, fulfilled a lot of goals. Right. But it's also like, but how I'm living is now what I'm trying to architect. Yes. How I feel is what I'm trying to architect. And we got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about relationships, because were it not for some key relationships and some pretty major pain in those relationships, these lessons I wouldn't have really been awake to them. It wasn't until I like did some harm to people that I really care about a lot. And there was some distance that I was like, whoa, oh my goodness. And it was a major eye opener. That's when I had the realization like, wow, I've been so busy. I had this total bonehead move. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it was like the dumbest thing I could have done in relation to this person. And I wasn't even aware of it in the moment until they brought it to my attention like a week later. And when they told me that, I was like, I can't believe myself. Like, how could I have been so foolish? I was beating myself up and worked through that, of course. I'm still not beating myself up because now I see it as the ultimate gift. Because were it not for that rock bottom moment, it wouldn't have been the eye opener that I need to transform my life so I can be in tune with the most important relationships in my life, my family, my kids, all my relationships. So what role does relationships play? Do you believe, like many do, that we're attracting people into our lives so that we can level up? And then can you talk about like when is it too much? Because there's this thing when you're both growth oriented, or when one party's growth oriented, that when the hits are coming and there's struggle and pain, you're like, this is helping me to see my shadow and me to see where I have blemishes. But then sometimes it could get to be too much for one or both of the people. So how important are relationships in our growth journey, and how do we navigate it with like not without doing a disservice to ourselves?
Yeah, such a deep question. And this is where I've been, I would say the past like 4 years or so, is exactly in this arena, because I was, my first program is a health program. It's called Vital Mind Reset. And I was so focused on these material inputs to the body, right? So how do you create a safe lifestyle so that your body begins to get the message that it can disburden and regenerate and all these things, right? And I was understandably very focused on the chemtrails and the pesticides and, the EMFs and all the things that
all the finger pointing.
Exactly, at odds with that. And I wasn't aware truly about how rudimentary my relational skills were. I've been married twice. I have friends. I've had friends my whole life. Like, I'm a mom and community, and I truly didn't know. So I have my last marriage to thank for exposing that to me, right? And so you mentioned your officiant and her partner. Those kinds of tumultuous dynamics can either, move through the maturational stages into compatibility, or they can be like these catalysts for the journey to what I truly would call self-love, which is radical responsibility for my lived experience as a relational being. Right. And that is not what I think most people think of as self-love, right? Like they think like, oh, it's like, taking a bath or whatever. Like, no, it's taking full responsibility, which is to know the power of God within you to generate any experience that you want. And if you know that, how do you not feel that love, moving through your vessel? So the work that I went deep. Like I when I left that last relationship, every every minute that I've spent pretty much since has been in service of my own self-discovery, right? And to create the conditions for true intimacy, with my children, with family, friends, etc. And so that's where I developed these, because I love having like rubrics. I love having like memorizable, little cues. It really serves me personally. And I think it does for a lot of folks anyway. So this is what I wrote about in my last book called The Reclaimed Woman. And there's, the program that goes with it. And it's basically these 3 tools, which I'll just like rapid fire super quick right now, that I think translate to emotional sovereignty, right? Like emotional maturity and the opportunity to really show up to relationships as what they are intended to be, which is a connection between 2 autonomous individuals. Okay. So the first is anytime you're upset, right? Upset in any way, you're going to what I call enter through the upset. And the practice is what I already referenced before. It's committing to prioritizing that for 90 seconds. You can go in a bathroom, you can sit in your car, just go around, a wall somewhere and take 90 seconds and you recruit that inner husband. Again, you could call it a father, you could call it God, whatever you want, but you feel your spine, right? You are holding the container now for whatever's swirling around inside, and you're just there for it. Oh, see that, see that, see that. Okay, that's it. Entering through the upset. The pattern disrupt of prioritizing your emotional experience, especially for women, is life altering because we are entrained, conditioned, and programmed to prioritize and caretake the emotional terrain of literally everyone around us. So when we reclaim that, it has this ripple effect and it has a nervous system level effect that is very profound. Take my word for it. Okay, so the next thing is you were upset about something, right? Maybe somebody criticized you. You're going to what I call wear the villain crown. You're just gonna, in the privacy of your own room, you're gonna try it on. Especially in relationships, this is extraordinarily powerful, right? So if somebody levies a criticism at you, says that you're bad and wrong in some way, and you don't agree, that's fine. But just try it on. Try on the possibility that you're being a selfish prick. Try on the possibility that you have been selfish. What does that mean? I don't know. Try it on. Maybe it's just a little bit true, right? So when you wear the villain crown, it can also go the other way. And this is sort of another topic, but like anytime I feel judgmental or critical, as a good spiritual woman, I might say, well, that's not nice. I shouldn't think those things, let alone say them. And instead, I'm just going to try on the possibility that I'm also that thing sometimes, or maybe I kind of want to be, right? Lazy, stupid, incompetent, whatever. Then the last thing is to recognize when you are trying to buy eggs from the hardware store, right? So that means when you know in your bones what's available here. You've already seen somebody's true colors, which usually we can observe within the first interaction. And you're insisting that they change. You're insisting that something else be available. Not only is that not love, it's not love. It's aggression, actually. But it's the signature of the childlike hope that parental love will someday, somehow, if I just get them to offer it to me, be available. And it is a very effective, however immature, reflex that you can begin to subdue by recognizing when you're trying to get the impossible, when you're trying to extract from the impossible place the love that's not on offer in the way that you want it. That allows somebody to be who they are. It allows you to see them for who they are and to begin to relax the urgency and the compulsion to get them to be somebody else. And so like those three tools, although there's many more when it comes to marriage. And honestly, John, it's funny because these days when I walk around the world, you and I were at Confluence together, and I think like 5 people came up to me at Confluence, and they weren't like, "Oh, I'm off my meds because of your program," and blah blah blah. They were like, "Your work saved my marriage,"
Oh,
and that like I could cry talking about it now, like for reasons that are related, obviously, to my own journey. It's the most profound service, that I can offer is to learn from what I didn't know. Largely courtesy of the feminist movement, and to offer reframes to women around the power that they have to transform marital dynamics without couples therapy and without their man even knowing, let alone changing, let alone insisting that he be different. And I am very passionate about this, so I have so much more to say about that subject, but it's a little teaser.
right on. Yeah, marriage is hard. And it's I think such a powerful institution because, you don't have to be married, of course, to have a healthy relationship, but there's a stability and there's families that are birthed out of it. But it's, boy, is it hard. And so I appreciate that your work has helped many people in relationships. Relationships are hard. But maybe I shouldn't even say that because I'm
I
trying to be
know, 'cause
mindful.
here I am
Yeah.
thinking like
Is
the
it
girl.
hard? Does it have to be hard? Am I making it hard by always thinking it's hard?
Well, that's why I just like to talk to the ladies. I'll
There
talk
you
to the
go.
ladies and see if we can make it a little easier.
Yeah, at Confluence, I was like, oh, Kelly Brogan's talking. I definitely want to check that out, hear her perspective. I know she caters to women, and then it was like, no men
I
allowed.
know. I'm trying to get them on the page so that you can. Everyone benefits. I mean,
Yeah.
when women reclaim their power, literally everyone benefits. So.
Yeah, and I know it can be more of an intimate container when you ladies are hanging out together. Okay, so I understand you have a program that you're going to be launching here pretty soon. Do you want to share with the audience what that's all about?
Thank you. Yeah. So I actually we haven't even announced this to my own community, but whatever. I'm here.
Whoa,
I know.
exclusive. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. But, after 15 years, after all of what I have discussed on this show, I have put together this 2-step program for safety, right? For body safety, for relational safety, and for the identity shift from sick and struggling to sovereign, to vital, and really to this self-possessed. What I want to create as a vision board for all of us is a relaxed woman. So it's called the Relaxed Woman System. Why? Because I actually think that a relaxed woman is the most powerful force there is. It's the most disruptive. If you just think about a woman who has a relaxed system, you know that she has tremendous soft power and that she cannot be controlled, manipulated, co-opted, and that she is offering her heart wisdom to everyone around her. So anyway, the system is, it includes my health program and then this Reclaim program and a lot of my curated lifestyle tips and recommendations and endorsements. And it feels like the culmination of my career. And we are opening the doors on the 24th.
Cool. All right. The website's Kelly Brogan MD, Kelly Brogan MD. And then I just put the link to join the newsletter, kellybroganmd.com/newsletter. I remember you promoted my crypto course in 2021 and like absolutely blew it up. And I was like, oh my God, I think I'm onto something. She must have such a giant email list and following. Crypto was going up in price at the time, not as high as it is now, but I've always admired your entrepreneurship as well. And maybe we'll have you on another time to talk about all that. Cause I get the feeling too, just based on how your assistant was dealing with me, like you got a lot of boundaries on getting me on the program. And I was like, I love
and you're
that.
VIP. You're VIP, John.
Yeah. And I was like, I want to operate like that. Oh, boy, this is a process. Okay. I get it. I respect it. So it's because you respect yourself. So this was awesome. I appreciate you and really just honored to do this interview. And I really have gratitude for the work that you're doing in the world, because I know it makes a huge difference. Everybody's focused on out there and the enemy and political freedom. It's like political freedom and then, okay, health freedom, but then you could still have a healthy body, be totally fit, eat all the right things, but you're a mess up here and in your heart.
That's me how I know.
Yeah, we know. Okay, so hey, thanks so much. Appreciate you.
Such a pleasure, John. Truly, truly. I'll come back anytime.
Awesome. All right, take care. Bye. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. That was great. As I journey more into self-development, spirituality, you can expect more of that here on the program. It's just all about true freedom, which comes with great responsibility. And a lot of times we're not even responsible for our own thoughts, our own emotions. We're just like playing out this program. And it can be really painful for us. And then it could spill over onto those around us, which is the worst. So let us all take more time and create more time by slowing down and just simply being. I have a coach, Jesse Elder, who's done some awesome work with me and super potent guy. And I recently did a call with him and was trying to get his advice on this path. How should I move forward with this private realm work? Because I'm really passionate about the private realm work. I was like, I got this option. Of course, I'll do the marketing and the webinar, but then I could do this and the course, or I could partner with these folks, and then we could do the done with you services, but then in-person masterminds. But ultimately, I want to be a trustee, accumulating or like steward in this property and this other one, and maybe we do it over here if this is successful. And he was like, wow, that's all sounds so passionate. Like, wow, I appreciate your passion. And I was like, so what do I do? And his advice was, he just went on this nice little diatribe about how important stillness is. And the way he answered my question is like, so what do I do, Jesse? You do nothing. And so that's the advice I'd like to leave you guys with today. Let us all focus more of our time, energy, and attention on simply being. Because when we do, I think that's the state of the greatest amount of freedom we could possibly experience, when we simply be. Okay, thanks so much, friends. This was real. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to the channel wherever it is. Ding, ding, ding. Boop, boop, boop. Subscribe to the podcast if you're a podcast person over at livefreenow.show. Until next time, stay free, my friends. Peace.